Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? Our first speaker of the evening, and discussing how labour platforms transform the ways in which people learn and develop professionally in the workplace, Professor Anoush Margaryan.
Hello everyone, good evening, and very happy birthday, people per hour. So I was asked to offer some reflections on the future of work and the future of learning and skills. I'd like to offer some general observations on the changing nature of work and what that means for what kinds of skills and attributes will be important moving forward. Historically, the introduction of new technologies has always destroyed jobs, but it has also created new jobs. And there doesn't seem to be a compelling reason to expect that the current cycle of technology development will be radically different as far as this kind of fundamental historical pattern is concerned. Secondly, just because jobs and work tasks can be automated doesn't mean that they will be automated. Technology is not exogenous to our society, it's part of the socio-technical, socio-cultural system of the society. And historically, deployment of technology is always enabled as well as constrained by a broader set of forces, by organizational, by ethical, political, economic considerations. And at present, we don't really know how these forces and these factors will play out, and more importantly, how they may play out differently in different countries. Scholars who study the impact of artificial intelligence have pointed out that currently few, if any, intelligent machines or intelligent systems are truly autonomous or truly unmanned. Madeleine Ellis, who is a cultural anthropologist at Columbia University, argued that, quote, "When we examine autonomous systems, we must look not to the erasures of the human, but to the ways in which we as humans are newly implicated." Information scientists Bonnie Nardi and Hamid Egbia coined the term heteromation to denote the paradigm of work in which there is a division of labor between machines and humans. They argue that unlike the technologies of automation, the technologies of automation which disallow human intervention at nearly all stages of the system, the technologies of heteromation basically push critical tasks to end users as indispensable mediators, basically drawing the human back into the computational fold. So these kinds of heteronormative systems or workplaces are very much in evidence, from Amazon Mechanical Turk to factory floors in Germany and China, where humans increasingly collaborate with robots in our manufacturing or production systems. And I think that it seems likely that moving forward, at least in the medium term, it is these kinds of heteronormative arrangements rather than the pure automation paradigm that will be predominant. The historian Yuval Harari, whose book Homo Deus Sapiens you may have read, he has pointed out that not just the idea of a job for life, but the idea of a profession for life may soon seem antediluvian. Harari's argument suggests that we will have to be flexible, not just in terms of our knowledge and skills, but also in terms of the locations where we work for, the sectors we work for, and indeed our entire professional identity will have to be flexible, and we have to be prepared mentally and practically to drastically reorient ourselves at least several times throughout our careers. So this takes me to the future of learning and skills. I'd like to suggest to you that as we undergo these horizontal and vertical transitions and reorientations that are implied in Harari's argument, the ability to instigate and actively seek these transitions rather than just weathering out the transitions as they're forced upon us will become a critical mindset. We know from research in sociology and psychology that people who are successful at undergoing transitions share at least three important characteristics. First, they have self-reliance and the self-knowledge to understand who they are and who they may be in future. Secondly, they have dynamic and sufficiently heterogeneous networks to provide the kinds of role models and to show them who they can become in future. And thirdly, they are risk takers, and they have high tolerance of uncertainty and openness to experience and to acting their way into change. And a lot of you are freelancers here, so I'm sure that many of you share these characteristics. I'd argue that presently our public discourse and policy landscape is overly focused on the formal, institutionalized forms of learning and training. And limited recognition and limited value is given to the self-directed and self-initiated forms of learning that individuals engage in throughout their lives, either individually or in cooperation with others. The problem is that these educational and training systems that we have come to rely on are very, very conservative, they're very slow, and they're very clunky, and it is questionable that these institutions will be able to provide the rapid and dynamic reskilling and reorientation that individuals will need. And so I think that moving forward, the most important attribute that individuals must acquire is the ability to self-direct and self-regulate their learning. This means being strategic and dynamic in identifying one's own learning goals, being proactive in seeking feedback, continuously studying the market to identify the skill requirements and strengthening your own personal self-efficacy, being self-reflective, and dynamically changing our learning strategies and goals when these are not working. So these sorts of attributes, you would argue, have always been important, at least psychologically, but I would argue that we are now at the stage where these kind of attributes become supremely important economically as well. My last point is that moving forward, some radically new skills will also be required. One of these is for us to learn to cooperate effectively with intelligent machines in our increasingly heteronormative workplaces. The emergent forms of algorithmic management of labor necessitate the ability to work productively with a machine in a supervisory relationship. So the question I would like to ask is, in a workplace where your boss is a machine, where it is the algorithms that allocate and dynamically price work, it is the algorithms that record and evaluate the quality of work and the output, how do you go about, what kinds of skills, abilities, capabilities do you need to work productively with these kinds of intelligent machines, and how can you develop these capabilities? Presently, our policy landscape appears to overlook these kind of new skill requirements altogether, and our educational and training institutions are doing very little to prepare people for this new reality. Let me conclude by observing that to succeed in the future of work, we have a greater need for personal autonomy, for self-reliance and self-direction. because at least for some time to come, there will be no accepted code of rules and rituals to spare us the challenge of individual decision making in our work and in our learning. Thank you.